All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Jody Solberg. I am the president of NGHWA, and we're so excited for you all to be here live and virtually for this month's meeting. It is May, and what we decided to talk about today is instead of having an individual speaker, what we're going to do is we're going to have a roundtable discussion about smoking cessation. Because as you all probably are aware, that is one of the hot topics when it comes to hypnosis, right? A lot of people come to us for things like smoking cessation and changing habits. And so we have a lot of expertise in the room when it comes to that. And so we wanted to just have a discussion around different techniques, different programs that we may offer, stories that we have of clients, anything that we can educate more people about, and we can learn from each other. So that is what we're going to be doing today. So I would love to do some quick introductions. We haven't done that yet. So we can all introduce ourselves, and it's okay to have that recording. Everybody can see who we are and what we do. Like I said, my name is Jody Solberg. I have been a hypnotherapist for, what year is it? 23 years now. And so I come from more of a clinical background. And what I specialize in is trauma, anxiety, and neurodiversity for adults as well as for kids and families. So that is what I do. And then we're gonna turn the camera around so then everybody can introduce themselves and we can see everyone. And we'll also have DL introduce himself.
Yes, hello, I'm Danny Green, and I've been practicing hypnosis since 2015. I specialize in helping people rewrite the story they tell themselves at the inner mind level. It's a lot about emotional healing and redoing the story of your life, past, present, and future. My smoking curriculum is called Be Smoke Free, and then I cross off the word smoke, which means be free. And I have questions, so this will be a great discussion.
Hi, Sari Rome with Serenity Hypnotherapy, and I've been active in certified in hypnotist for I think 3 years this year, and I started off with working with people with disabilities. I got certified with hypnosis because I had such a wonderful experience, personal experience with it. Stop smoking has not been my primary, but it has been in my business, and I will be doing a group stop smoking in September, probably the middle of September, locally in the Everett local field area. So I look forward to introducing that.
Great.
Hi, I'm Tina Worthy. I started my own business, Open Heart, Open Mind Hypnotherapy. I think it was in 2006. So the years go by very, very quickly. I would say my emphasis is on the holistic spiritual side. Really deepening your spiritual anchors can help you with overcome anything. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And what I've been doing for my smoking cessation and is sessions are typically I find 5 is the magic number for me. And at the last session, I have them bring all their paraphernalia, and I give them the option at the end of the session to take it home with them or leave it. I've been getting quite a collection of stuff. So pretty cool.
Yeah, good idea. Wow, really good. I tried something drastic like that. It didn't work, but that's even better than what I do. All right, great. And is it?
Hi.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I've been a registered hypnotist in Washington for about 3 years. I don't have a practice, but when I did my training, they went over smoking cessation using press negotiation, which I think is very effective. But I don't have a practice myself. So I'm always here to learn more.
Hi, I'm James. I use hypnosis and hypnotherapy in the security industry, run a security company and train our officers on how to de-escalate situations, gain rapport through compliance, and then or compliance through rapport, I should say, but then also dealing with people in crisis. I also believe that hypnosis is going to be the catalyst to change the world, and want to be a part of that, the evolution of it, the advancement, distribution to the whole world.
Yay. Yes, go global.
Yeah.
And if you're ever looking for clients, healthcare facilities have a lot of
Yeah.
nurses
Yeah,
around there.
exactly.
Smoking.
Exactly. Okay,
Yes,
And-
I mean,
just introduce, ask the
Yeah, and then DL, we would love for you to introduce yourself as well. Tell us who you are and
What's
what you
that?
do. Go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know your focus and your practice.
Okay. I am DL Scott. I usually go by Scott. And I've been in hypnotherapy practice since the early 90s. And I also work as a social worker. I work in different clinics throughout these years where I was working with people who have drug and alcohol problems. And so I've been certified as a substance use dependency professional. I use my hypnosis with a lot of clients on that, and I get really, really good results. I use the ERT, which is emotional release therapy, which is a particular piece I do that's a lot like EMDR. And I don't know if any of you have heard of EMDR, but emotional release therapy, in fact, I got myself certified with EMDR just to see how close it is to my emotional release therapy. It's exactly the same thing. It's just called different things. So my niche is both drugs and alcohol, and of course, nicotine being a drug, I also do a lot of smokers. And I worked for Group Health years ago in their smoking cessation program, and I've taken a couple of cues from them. But primarily, what I do is I do 4 sessions, and I with everyone, whether they're smoking or not, after the first session, they get a code so that they can go onto my website and they can do a download with their code for free on an MP3 for whatever matches with what we were working on. Because years ago, I had done several recordings that I could sell on the internet, and they're still on my website. So like I said, what I do right now is some people buy them off the website, but it primarily where I have clients who are listening to the MP3 on a daily basis, and they can order it for free off the website.
That's fantastic. That's a great idea. Thank you.
Oh, hey there, I'm Jyoti, and I'm a medically certified hypnotherapist, also specialize in past life regression, natal regression, interlife regression. And I do a transcendental meditation, helping people go into more of a fantasy kind of space where with my energy healing and a combination of hypnotherapy, I can help them remove obstacles and find answers to solutions they've been searching for. Most of the work I do these days is online. However, I will be doing some in person in the near future also.
New clients. And what I help them do is work on their beliefs about cigarettes, their behaviors, help self-hypnosis techniques. And then I have a final 4th session where they name a date, and that's their be smoke-free date. And they're going to be free after that. And we're going to stop, after working through their emotional reasons why we smoke cigarettes. And neither of my 2 clients have scheduled that final meeting. They ghost me. They just don't want to stop. And so that's been my struggle with to stop smoking. Yeah. So just obviously because my program's still in beta, because until I have success with it, I charge just $75 a session rather than my regular rate, just because I care about their health and but I'm like, this is beta. So we're still, I can't charge you full price until, I just tell them. I don't tell them that because that might set up their opinion of their success. But I say, hey, I care about your health. I charge $75 per session for this. Just
How you prove it to yourself.
yeah, really, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's been my slight struggle with it.
Does anybody have any feedback or like recommendations for Danny on how to help get over that hurdle?
Well, when I let people know, they left, they step out the door a non-smoker. But if for any reason they, find themselves having a cigarette, and that's not, I hate the word relapse, that's just, more learning. And then, you sort of note what's going through your mind previous to that, what was your state of being, so we have this more information that we can work on next session. And then again, in that next session, they're still gonna walk out the door a non-smoker.
So you said your last session, you invite them to be able to bring all that paraphernalia to potentially give that up. So have you run into any of what Danny's talking about with people not being fully committed to getting to themselves to that last appointment?
Yeah, for me, when they call you, they want you to wave your magic wand and in one session, okay? But I've been
Yes.
trying to let them know that really this is a multi-dimensional problem, so we're gonna work on it. And that's why it's gonna take a few sessions. We really set the education, the foundation, really start, changing their mindset. And because I also let them know that it's not about the habit, the substance. It's about the emotions and the emotional state that drives that. So, when you're gonna change this state and work with these parts, sometimes there's a few parts in there that need to be addressed. It's multi-layered, and some clients take more sessions than others.
So I see. Okay.
I can add a couple things. When I did my training for smoking cessation, one of the options that we have for clients is when you do take that cigarette, use the opposite hand to hold the cigarette. That way you're changing your pattern and you're thinking about it differently. It makes you a little bit more uncomfortable when you're using the opposite hand. And something else that a lot of my clients really didn't like was to get a cup of water and put the butts in there and carry the butts around wherever you go. So you've been by your bedside table in your cup holder and then they say, well, that smells disgusting. So, well, this is kind of the point, isn't it? And I found a lot of opposition to that, but the people who do it realize, wow, this is really disgusting, and they do quit. But little tricks like the opposite hand, or when you're doing opposite hand and then taking a few puffs, oh, look what I'm doing, because a lot of it can be an automatic response. Put it out. Just put it out. And so it's getting into that new habit of opposite hand, put it out after a few puffs, and then start weaning yourself that way. So even if you're leaving the session as a non-smoker and you do have these little setbacks, we don't want to be hard on ourselves, right? Because we want to be kind and loving to ourselves so that we can ultimately reach our goal. So let's just do a few little adjustments along the way to help our mind realize, oh yeah, we are making a change consciously,
I'd like to
subconsciously.
throw a couple of things in there. When I work with clients, whether it be for smoking cessation or anxiety or alcohol and drugs, I always start with a 2-hour session. And the reason I start with that 2-hour session is because there's paperwork to fill out, and there's also a form asking questions to bring up emotional issues or emotional memories from the past. And so with the smoking, what I do is during that first session, I also have them take uh, it's 2 different quizzes. One quiz helps you realize whether you have just a habit or an addiction, and another one is um, let's see what exactly it is that the nicotine is helping you to cope with. Because what I've discovered as a substance use dependency professional is that more and more people now in the business, whether that be just for counseling or hypnotherapy, they're actually looking at all drugs, all alcohol as a coping mechanism, not as the enemy, and that's helping people a lot getting away from their particular coping mechanism that they chose. So with the smoking, as I said, I do the 2 tests. on addiction or habit. I also do a test on tells them what the smoking helps with the most. And it could be I don't have one in front of me, but there's a whole list of different things that the smoking you get the most relief from this due to the smoking. So we do that test, and then I'll give them the answers to that test in the next session. Because what happens is once we're done with the emotional release therapy, and then we set up another appointment for the following week, that's when they get their first download, which is just for the emotional release therapy. The next week when they come in, we start doing specifically the induction on smoking cessation, and they're able to get a download MP3 for the smoking cessation to start listening to. The only other thing that I can throw in there is that I was taught years ago by Group Health when I was working in the program to do a step down process. And what that means is that I have a list of cigarettes and how much nicotine units is in each one of the cigarettes. So that whatever the client is smoking, if they just switch down to a lower nicotine unit each time from that point on that they're smoking, and that just helps cut down on the amount of nicotine going into the body. It makes it that much easier, as I explained to them, at the end of the 4 weeks when their quit date is. So I don't ask them to quit until the end of the 4 weeks. Some people do, but as I tell them, we'll set your quit date for your fourth session, and that tends to work really, really well.
Mhm.
My 2 cents on it, I think a big place to start is also what he's speaking to is addressing idealism. That's looking at what does the patient expect to be getting out of the substance. When you're able to rationalize that, break that down, and allow them to disassociate that from that, that's incredibly powerful. If you look at nicotine, for example, what do people think that they're getting out of smoking a cigarette? Why would be taking a stimulant? Why would that calm you? It does the act of itself. That's calming, breathing here, everything else. Also with alcohol, why do they think that depressant is going to help you? It's what it does to the nervous system. It's the exact opposite. So breaking down the actual idealisms that people hold around the substance, I think, is one of the most.
Yeah, like I said, it really helps a lot when people realize what it is that they're getting out of the smoking, what the smoking is doing for them.
Okay, so let's let James finish.
Okay, so
Sorry.
with identity, I think it's very important to also look at that identity too. If you can get people to break away their idealisms, then that's how they become to identify themselves. For myself, I'm a recovering addict of pretty much everything out there, but I identify as somebody who would never do these things ever again in my life. So with that, dates don't matter. If I were to sit there and list the last time that I did cocaine or drank alcohol, it still has a power over me. Or if you're to say maybe one day I can have the control to be able to do it lightly again, to be able to have a beer, that's idealism. So you have to break away from those idealisms, and also it comes down to identity. You have to be able to identify as somebody that does not do those things again. So the date doesn't matter. If you hold a date, then that substance still has an idealistic power over you. So dates, I would just get away from them if you can identify otherwise. Also, like, I wouldn't do this for $1 million. Well, I identify as somebody that doesn't smoke, so I would gladly take the $1 million to smoke a cigarette. I'm going to smoke the cigarette, never do it again after that, because I just got $1 million. Because I identify as somebody I don't care. Like, I'm just going to take $1 million at this point. It comes down to identity. Also, another thing, talking about the paraphernalia with Tina. For example, my friend, he was trying to relapse with cocaine. So he had to make a decision with his girlfriend. He had an 8-ball of cocaine, and they decided to flush it in the toilet together. That's good, but you're not empowering yourself in the long term. It'd be a lot more powerful for him to throw it in the garbage and let it sit there for a week. He's got 6 days until trash comes. That's still his decision for 6 days. Once you flush it down the toilet, what power are you still having over that substance? Right. So removing paraphernalia from your environment doesn't actually empower you to make a better decision. For myself, stop smoking weed. I thought that throwing the bong away was gonna help me stop. That's not true. I mean, keeping the bong there as a reminder that this is my decision, it's my identity. I'm not smoking marijuana. I have to do it. that's a lot more empowering. That's more your decision through your identity. So that's what I'd say about
And for some, keeping the paraphernalia might just trigger, tempt them and trigger them back. So it really depends. That
If
really
there's a beer
depends.
sitting in the fridge, I'm probably gonna.
Yeah.
You know,
Are you though, at this point? Third person, it comes down to identity. Put everything on the table.
Yeah, like you're saying, like that was your sense of identity, because that makes sense. As somebody, who, I mean, has it, they don't, it's like identify as somebody who generally doesn't drink. And so that makes sense of like, if you identify like that, I mean, it's there, like that it's empowering for you because you feel like then that's your choice.
Mhm.
You can do that with other people as well. I mean, help them break down their idealisms, help them build up their identity that this is who you are now. As somebody that's not going to do this again for the rest of your life, you don't have to care about the date. And they're a lot more empowered. They can do everything. They should be able to be in control of themselves no matter what is in their environment. Because you can't ever control your environment, you can only control yourself.
So, kind of building on what everybody said, so I go at not becoming a non-smoker, but being, excuse me, I don't go at quit smoking versus I'm a non-smoker for the rest of my life. And really use that part of the hypnotic trances and inductions and so becoming a non-smoker versus quitting smoking. I think it's harder to quit something, but identity is the big thing that I work with. Also, I try to get with in the very beginning, what do they feel is their issue around smoking or drinking, which is different. A lot of times that I find it's different what the actual issue is, but when I go at allowing them to identify what they think their problem is and then sort of put that in there, even though I know maybe it was a childhood issue or a parent or etc. So letting them identify, let them know that they're working on what they have identified has helped. I also say that there is no one way that will work for everyone, and that includes the group. The group aspect, because I will say, there will be people walking out of here who choose not to be a non-smoker today, but that doesn't mean that you're not a non-smoker. It just means we're going to go at it a different way, offer them, the follow-up. And then the last thing was giving a lot of coping techniques because of the physical aspect of coming off the nicotine or any other substance is really important. The breathing, the shaking, the mirror work, talking to yourself, that kind of thing. Just give them something that they feel that they have, they're not alone. And then I do offer follow-up. I don't care if it's a week later or a year later, if they committed to be a non-smoker, they're doing their work, they're not smoking, all of a sudden trauma comes up, they pick up the cigarette, call me before you light. Just call me.
So
Reach out.
knowing that they have that long-term support. If they
Right,
have
and I'll give them that call, for free. Because I feel, a lot of times in that one phone call, that one support, they'll say, yeah, you're right. I really don't need to go here. I can go to these coping mechanisms.
reminding them of what works. And
Right.
that's what's nice about having the recording, things like that too,
Yes.
that they can continue to use whenever they feel like they need that. For me, I haven't done a group, so I'm interested to talk about that here in a second. But most of the time when I'm working with somebody on addictions, and I work with a lot of people where it's marijuana smoking versus cigarette smoking. But it's because they're my trauma and anxiety clients. And that's just like you all were talking about, it's a coping strategy for them. So we're really working on those deeper issues of, what are they using to cope? And some of them started it at alcohol and they were also smoking marijuana. And then it was like, oh, I stopped alcohol, but now I'm treating marijuana the same exact way I did alcohol. And so, we're looking at, what's going on, those emotional issues and memories and, what are the coping mechanism versus the substance, because you can use a lot of different things as a coping mechanism that aren't that great. It could be the emotional eating, it could be smoking, it could be drinking, it could be all sorts of different kinds of drugs or different things. And so typically when I'm working with people around smoking, it's been more the other work that we're doing, and that just happens to be a symptom or a part of that. So I am really interested because I haven't done a group specifically for smoking. I would love to hear from those of you that have, like, what your experience is, because that's a really good point, Sri, about like everybody's going to have a different underlying issue of like how they started, why they're doing that, versus maybe just picking it up in high school and then it's just now a habit. A lot of times there is that emotional coping mechanism type of thing that you have to deal with. And if everybody's is different, how do you go about that in a group?
Well, the group is going to be pretty customized.
Okay.
They're gonna have the same paperwork to fill out and stuff, but it's more or less going around and during induction, making sure that everybody's comfortable. And if you see somebody who is just restraining, you have to kind of pull them to the side and have like I have an assistant. So pull to the side, find out what the issue is. What is your resistance here? Do you need to come back another day? Do you need to go one-on-one? But for the most part, you can't identify who's going to walk out that day. Committed non-smoker. But the whole program is really set up to sort of get them knowing that this is really what they want. And they're not going to stop if they don't want to stop. And it doesn't matter if you're one-on-one or a group, you're going to identify that. So giving them a lot of options of, okay, well, obviously today you've changed your mind. So would you like to start one-on-one? Okay. So then you can have personalized. Maybe it's the energy. Maybe it's, you just thought you were ready, but why don't you stay anyway? So if they do want to leave, like in the pretty close to the beginning, I will say I can give them money towards your one-on-one. I'm just giving them every option because, everybody has this desire. Otherwise, they never would have contacted you. They never would have signed up for that group class. But where are their motivations? And they sometimes don't know that until they get in there. So, and then if they don't call, then they're not ready. And it's okay.
Yeah.
You've already planted a seed.
Yeah. It's true.
But yes, back to what Jen said, the magic wand. I mean, that's what they expect. They expect, especially groups. It's like, we're going to walk in there, we're going to walk out. It's like, some people, yes, it's crazy. It's like, it's magical when it happens. And it does happen.
But don't
Those
expect that.
people are already at threshold to change.
Yeah, they're all on their own level. Like, I've had people, it's like, I've smoked for 14 years and I don't know, I'm done, nothing major like that. And then there's other people who are like, well, my doctor says if I don't stop, I'm going to die in 6 months. And they still can't.
Well, that's because the doctor wants it, but you ask them, what do you really want? They're like, I want to smoke till I die, because that's what's true.
Yeah.
If they have to
Depending on their
leave,
motivation.
they're gonna leave your group.
It's always the belief, no matter if I'm working on what I'm working on. It is the belief. You believe that this is going to work for you. Do you want it?
I think, at least when I was trained, with the pre-talk, like having a really strong pre-talk before the session, you do most of the work in the pre-talk and making sure that it's them that want it, not that their spouse told them to, or because their doctor said they're going to die if they don't. It's that they actually have to want it themselves.
In groups, I also separate the spouses way apart because they feed on each other's energy.
Or if you have a smoker at home and you're going to stop and they're not.
Yes, That's a hard one for us. But it's been done.
I think what you're all talking about is point. I think I learned in one of my academies that you want to make sure that people are at what he calls threshold, which is asking two questions. It has to be now and it has to be me. Not taking that personal responsibility. They're not at threshold.
It has to be now, is what you said?
Yes.
Okay.
Now.
And it has to be me. That's the most important one. Nobody else can do this for me. I can't do this because my wife wants to do it.
Yeah. And another thing too is to convince them and show them that what happens at the subconscious level with hypnosis is different than other things we've tried before. Set them up to go, this is a different tool. And it's more effective, than the patches or, whatever you've tried before. In my behavior session, I asked for 3 different ways things they could do to, when they want a cigarette, 3 different choices they could make. I'm not really in the camera. And then I read a book about, stopping with alcohol, and she literally had 10 coping strategies, literally in a bag, like the size that Tina just brought, like tea, her, a little meditation book. She had something that she could actually just grab as, okay, rather than grabbing for a cigarette or alcohol in this book, I'm going to go get my coping bag and do one of those things in there, whether it was a journal and tea and just different, I don't know what her long list of things was. And I thought, well, that's great because it's 10 things. And secondly, it's physical like that. And you can, bring it with you or have it in a place where, by your favorite chair or something.
Because sometimes when those, emotions are overcoming you, it's hard to remember
Yeah.
all of the things. Like, okay, what am I supposed to do instead? Because you're still like chewing on something and your emotional brain's going like 4 times faster than your thinking brain. And it's like, what did Jody tell me? Right. And so I like that idea of like, oh, go have a physical bag where it's like, not just a list somewhere or something like that, where you can be like, okay, this is what I was supposed to do instead. That's really smart. Thanks, Danny.
Yeah.
Huh.
I thought that.
Yeah, wasn't it?
Have any of you guys
Yeah.
used the anxiety straws? They're like this big and you wear it as a necklace.
Oh, no.
And so, I mean, if you're smoking, if you're stressed out, well, you remove yourself from the situation, you have to go outside to smoke. So that's already, and then you grab your straw instead, you can just, it's the same thing as smoking. It's the same action that's actually calming you. It's just taking that slow deep breath and releasing. And imagine doing that without clumping your lungs full of a stimulant, and just use a straw. Or they make a little necklace. They call them anxiety straws or something. Anxiety. They look like whistles, but they don't make noise. And you just wear it on your neck.
Yeah.
Wherever you feel the need, you feel that pain, that craving, that I need to run away. And do the same actions that you did when you were smoking.
And send that to a client.
Yeah, and you could even have a straw in your, bag.
You can use a straw like this. like
Yeah.
that. But they make it as a necklace, so it's always with you.
Mhm.
I actually went through that. It was that without the straw, actually, with one of my clients a couple days ago, where that was one of the techniques that I recommended to her because she has a tendency. She's one of my trauma and anxiety and marijuana people who she needs to quit for her health as well. But again, it has to be for you, right? And so we're working on that. And she, the only place she feels like she can go and get space to herself is if she goes in the bathroom and smokes. And that's her coping strategy, right? And so that was one of the things we talked about is, okay, when she has the urge to do that, because she's gotten herself to where she's good in the morning and she's pretty good at night. She has this like mid-afternoon time where she's hitting a wall a little bit. So yeah, we talked about that. Same, like do the action without actually picking up anything to smoke and just do that action and breathe. Because breathing on its own wasn't really cutting it. And so it's like, okay, we'll just do the
That's what I
action.
did.
And
Straw in the
so
bathroom.
you do the same thing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
run away to the
So-
bathroom. Like, okay, well,
Yeah. exactly. Yeah. I'm so glad to hear that that works for you. Yeah, that's what I recommended. So I'll message her and send her a link for one of the straws and say, hey, if this helps, then add that if you want. Yeah.
I have a question. Has anybody seen the difference between actual cigarettes and vaping? As far as,
Good question.
I find personally that the vaping has been much, much harder.
Vaping, you can't tell how many, cigarettes you even smoke. It's like, at least with cigarette, there's a measure of, I'm a pack-a-day smoker, or whatever your budget or culture allows you to be, because that's usually what dictates how many cigarettes you smoke.
But they think that, oh, I've gotten off cigarettes. Yeah, I vape. I
Vaping
take
is
it. But
healthier.
it's like, okay, why are you vaping? It's actually worse, but what is, why is your mind telling you it's better or okay? Or like you're not smoking now because you're vaping, and
Well, people,
there's been a big struggle with that. I think just that. So it's been a learning curve for me to stop vaping a lot harder.
Well, like DL was talking about how he would stair step people down. And like you guys were just saying, like it's so much harder to figure that out, like how much that they're getting and then stair step that down. And I think when they first came out, no, but there wasn't really a lot of studies and science,
No.
telling you like, oh, it's worse for you. And so people didn't know. They were just like, oh, this is a great alternative. And then everything came out and said, oh, this is horrible for your lungs. Don't do that. After it existed.
Yeah, that's like just the doctor recommends. Cool. Yeah.
And then they come in all these quote unquote delicious flavors.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Instead of smelling like smoke, it smells like fruity or whatever. Yeah.
For the kids.
Cause it smells good when you're next to someone. Oh, that smells good. But when you realize what they're doing, you're like, oh boy, that. So I think sometimes they're using it instead of eating, instead of having that sweet tooth. Now they have something that smells and tastes good, and they're also getting their
Oh, that's a
nicotine
good
fix.
point. Okay.
Yeah,
Sugar and smoking combined.
it is sugar and smoking combined.
I am glad that you brought up the vaping because I've got somebody who's coming in for vaping this week, and I'm having to rearrange a couple of the items in my smoking program because we won't be able to do the step down process. So I was wondering if anybody has a specific induction that they've used with people who vape instead of smoke. Have any of you at the table?
I haven't.
No?
No, nothing special. I generalize. I just say nicotine items. I don't get, no matter what they come in for, I don't really care. Yeah, I don't really know if they're on cigarettes or vape or a pipe
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
I just leave it very generic. Chew, because they
Right.
want to quit
Yeah.
smoking, vaping, and chew. No, this is no nicotine.
Right. And the other thing, there's something I want to go back to when we get a chance on the, you were talking about the bag of coping mechanisms. I wanted to go back to that when we get a chance, but I don't want to take away from this discussion right now because, yeah, the chewing tobacco, I work with people with chewing tobacco and I can't do the step down process there. And I just use nicotine, as you said, as kind of a general item in the induction instead of
And that's
saying
when you
smoking
know,
or
that's
what's
when
that?
you know they're addicted to nicotine though,
Yeah.
Right,
versus this is a habit, a coping habit for anxiety.
right. Well, the thing is, like I said, I do a test. I do 2 different tests, and it helps people. It helps us to figure out whether you're stronger in the habit or whether you're stronger with the addiction.
Mhm.
And so that helps people get some clarity also at the second, after I get that scored. And we talk about that at our next session, our second session.
Mm.
That's a great point. So to pinpoint at the beginning, which is stronger? Is it just the habit or are we emotionally coping with something?
Right.
Do you find that people are often addicted? In the same ways like they are with other drugs? Do they like wake up in the middle of the night, smoke a cigarette, or can they go the whole night? No, they're addicted.
Right.
Can they make an 8-hour flight on an airplane without?
Not without jumping out a window, but yeah.
So sometimes they'll just avoid or like schedule around, those kinds of things, I'm sure, just to not have to go 8 hours.
Exactly. Absolutely. I've seen it. Just recently.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to go back to the bag now?
Yeah, the thing I want to go back to is, as I said, I do another quiz that helps them to determine what they get the most out of their smoking. And the 6 things that are on the test are the stimulation, pleasure, craving, handling, relaxation, or habit. And so what I do is once I grade that, the next session, I give out a little smoking cessation booklet. And in the booklet, there are a list of different coping mechanisms. I mean, they can be really, really simple coping mechanisms. But what they do is they match with whatever is their strongest reason for using, such as stimulation, or they did it for relaxation, or the handling. Then I help them to look at, so what would be the better coping mechanism to deal with those kind of issues? Since this is what you're saying, according to your test, that this is the issue that I'm covering the most with cigarettes. And then that way it helps them to find the coping mechanisms that will help them the most get away from the nicotine or the tobacco.
Could you list those 6 items again for the test?
Oh, absolutely. Let's see, stimulation, pleasure, craving, handling, relaxation, or habit. And as I said, I have a quiz that goes through questions, and according to whatever they score the highest on, that's what this nicotine or the tobacco is helping them to cope with that particular item, such as just say handling. Handling is just where you have to have your hands busy. So you know that, okay, so let's find some things that you can do that will take the place of holding the cigarette in your hand. See what I'm saying?
Right.
Or to like with relaxation, if you use cigarettes or tobacco for relaxation, and then finding some coping mechanisms that bring you relaxation, such as a lot of deep vagus breathing, deep vagus nerve breathing, or something that helps you to relax other than the cigarette. So that way you keep all this in mind, and when you want to grab a cigarette for whatever reason, now you got a list of different coping mechanisms that can help you with that same thing.
I have a similar questionnaire that I start the first session with, where they identify the why, why they smoke, where they smoke, when they smoke, and what triggers.
Yes.
Now that helps you identify their triggers, then you can use your hypnotic sessions. And then I start with them having to come up with alternatives. Then in session, I ask their subconscious to come up with more coping alternatives. And we
Right.
keep building on that every session.
Well, what you brought up, and I'll shut up here in just a minute, but it's interesting because go ahead. Go ahead with your discussion. Because yeah. That's okay.
Were you done with that point?
Yeah,
Yes.
but are we done? We're done with that point. May I bring a challenge that I have? My biggest challenge I find with my smoking clients is so many of them started when I call the aspect of this as the rebel, because that's the part that you see typically in preteen to teenage years, and it's cool with your crowd, and it satisfies that part of you that you can't tell me what to do. I
Right.
find that the aspect the hardest to overcome.
Rebel.
So
you
you
know
weren't
that-
having any success with
Tina-
handling the rebel.
Another way to help people find what it is that they're thinking or doing just before the cigarettes is I have a smoking diary. It's part of the smoking book that I give them. And so from the moment they first step in the door, they have this thing that they have to list out the date and the time, what you were feeling just before you had the cigarette, what you were thinking. And then that way, they can start recognizing, well, what is it that guided me to the cigarette? But interestingly enough, what I find out from my clients is that that's one of the most annoying things about the program. They said they really hate doing that. I said, so you mean every time you now light up a cigarette, you're annoyed because you have to fill out the diary? He said, yeah. I said, well, get annoyed a lot.
And then maybe that'll be a little bit of inversion therapy.
Exactly. That's kind of what that is almost. It's like they put in there and they get really tired of doing that. So, nope, sorry, you've agreed to do the program, so let's keep this as one of the steps.
And when I find that rebel side of it, and I did the inner child work, and then I have them see their, if they started at 12, 14, that kind of seems to be the general age, especially for boys. And it's like, okay, see the child, do you love him? Is he lovable? Blah, blah, blah. Would you give that child a cigarette right now, today? And then, continue with the regular inner child work where you're loving that child, putting them in your heart, nourishing him, taking care of him, and making sure that he doesn't pick up that cigarette, because today, when you're smoking, you're putting that nicotine in that child. So if they can connect to that inner child, which typically they can, I mean, I'd say 90+% they can. And the inner child one really seems to be connection with the boys.
Yeah.
With the girls. See, my last female non-smoker she identified, for some reason, she identified with the lies that society was telling her. Like, I just bought into the lies. That was one of my last females stop smoking. And I didn't quite understand where she got all of that, and how it worked, but I just let her run with it. Yeah. So for her, she didn't want to be lied to.
Okay, so she decided that she wasn't gonna believe those lies anymore. Okay.
Yep.
think with the inner child work, the way that I was taught, thing was you go back to the first time, but with all the knowledge of your present day self.
Yeah, there's hundreds of ways to do regression, but
But yeah, you're always taking back, like you said, that wisdom and knowledge.
Yeah, current, you're not.
Yeah.
it's amazing how many people can remember what happened the first time they like that's such a strong memory, and how they felt. That's all regression work. And it doesn't work on everybody. Yes, exactly.
So Danny, does that make you feel better with those people that you were talking about? That this is it's a whole journey and a whole process, and everybody's a little different. Some people take longer, and some people need different things, and so
So
Yeah.
for my one client who happens to be a relative, I actually saw that she had so much emotional trauma that I'm helping her write a book about it. And and she's just like, it already seems a lifetime ago, all of this trauma. And so when we publish the book, just by printing it at UPS and stapling it, it's not like, a high published book, but all of our information's out there on a page. And gone. And the last 4 pages are the healing statements that she received in hypnosis. The last, so that she'll have her healing documented as well. So I'm hoping to, when we get this done, ask her again, like, are you ready now? But she has a severe pain problem. She has rheumatoid arthritis, and cigarettes are the only thing that help her endure the pain. So it's really physically tied into her well-being. So it's a pretty tough situation.
Is there any medical
Basis
evidence
for
that
that, or is
nicotine?
she just convinced?
Yeah,
that-
it's a could
Oh,
be a
yeah,
placebo.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
she's
she-
convinced that that's the only thing that's gonna help me.
Yeah.
If you keep telling yourself that.
Yeah, and it's
Make it
actually making
fight
all of her
all this stuff.
inflammation worse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, it's exactly like what James was saying earlier. It's like you're taking this thing that literally physiologically does the opposite of the
Right.
effect that you're wanting it to have, but you're so convinced that it's helping you. And you keep telling yourself over and over again that it's helping you, that then leave it.
Yeah.
So hopefully, I mean, I think that's a beautiful process. You're really cathartic and getting it out of her head and onto that paper, including that healing. And so that's smart to revisit after she has that completed. Now to think a different thought, to believe something different.
It's funny, that I have this today. It's like for any kind of inflammational pain, the arnica, just like the arnica lotion you put on, it's a tea. This has been really helpful for my pain.
I have the
clients as
creams, I
well.
have the little homeopathy tablets
Yes.
too. Yeah,
So you
I
get
think that is good.
you get this at usually a Mexican market, but I just got it on Amazon. So yeah, I was really shocked. That's where you get it right. It's primary in a Mexican market, but it's the same arnica.
Mhm.
I mean, it's herbal. It's amazing.
Oh, I could ever try that for sure.
It doesn't taste bad at all. I mean, it tastes like an herbal tea. There's no real taste. It's not licorice. It's nothing strong. It's just light.
Well, and again, that would be different. So the cream versus like the homeopathy tablets or something like that isn't something that you're doing with your hands necessarily, right? And a tea is something it's like I can hold the cup, I can drink it, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it might be exactly a different mechanism. So if she's smoking, for example, then it might be more helpful than one of those other things because it feels more like that habit of like, okay, I can do this instead. That can be in her cooking bag of those options. But I think it's getting her to the place where she's willing to accept another truth, right? In her reality of that's not the only thing.
Right.
Such a good discussion today.
Yeah, and the same
Yeah.
client started smoking with her mom smoking, seeing her mom smoke, and her mom passed away. So it's an emotional connection. to her.
It's something they
It's
did
just so
together.
tied into her. And that was the only happy person at the time, so
Oh, no.
we better, we've got our
You're
work cut out for us.
Multi-layers. And so that's where, looking at somebody, like you said, if they're not done in 4 sections, like those are some of the reasons why. It's
Mhm.
because it's not just for those people necessarily just about smoking, not just about the habit deal with saying. Some people it is. Some people it is, but a lot of times it's so much deeper. And so, yeah, you're not going to be able to get through all of those underlying things in just like one small program. So I love what Sri was saying of like, then invite them to do that deeper work with you.
Very good. DL, did you have a comment?
Not at this moment.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. My other client, when she was trying to, cut down, it made her smoke twice as much.
Made her smoke what?
Twice as much.
Hmm.
She smoked twice as much.
So it was literally the same amount of nicotine. She just cut down to lower.
Well, no,
and then
she
did it
tried
twice
to
as much.
cut down and she just panicked
Oh, she
and
panicked.
started twice as much as normal.
So same amount of nicotine
Yeah.
in each one, just like.
Yeah, doubled her habit in trying to quit. So, so there's definitely some social issues there or some emotional issues.
That fits in with the rebound they will, I mean, it's not like I'll just start with a half a pack or a couple of days. It's where you left off and
Making up for lost time.
I guess so. I haven't seen anybody just say, well, I just had one cigarette and I'm concerned. It's like, I'm smoking again. Well, how much? As much as I was when I stopped.
Things like, same thing with like binging, or, yeah, same thing, yeah, I've had clients who have, yeah, stopped smoking and, or drinking or whatever it is, and then it's like, okay, like I'm all in, right? It's like
Yeah.
double the amount. So that, you know?
And no, like, I'm trying to get to the root of you quit for 10 years. Now, you know, doesn't matter if it's drinking or drugs or cigarettes or pot, whatever. You quit for 10 years. You made the decision to pick that up. Why? But then it becomes that emotional, usually. There's something really deep that's driving as a coping.
How I describe in neural pathways, basically, the clients is, you know, you have one that is the easy road that you take automatically, right? It's that autopilot, and that is a freeway at this point, right? It's been there for decades, probably. And then you're creating a new one. And so it's literally like going out in the woods and having to forge your own trail. You know, you're getting scratched up and you're trying to hack away all the bushes, and you know, it's a little rough. And then the more you use it, you know, the less resistance there's going to be, and you're going to form that trail, and then eventually it'll turn into a little road, and eventually you'll get to cement that one in. And you know, so I really, you know, give them that visual that, you know, where you have to keep choosing that one each time. So you have to figure out a way to stop, you know, pause and choose how to respond and take the new one instead. Then big life thing, like you said, 10 years will go by and some big life thing happens, and their brain wants to go right back to that old one again. And so, yeah, so that can be really, really powerful. Like, okay, that's when you need to have those different coping strategies to remember, because sometimes they forget because it's gotten easy.
Yeah.
And then they forget that, okay, this is what worked last time.
Right.
So a lot of my conversations sometimes lead into like what worked before. And like you were saying, Tina, a lot of times that's, you know, you ask them and they come up with the list, and then you ask their subconscious and it's like, okay, what worked? And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot. This worked really well years ago. When I was, okay, let's do that again, you know. And so getting them back on that new path. But I explained to them that that old pathway, even though you create the new one, the old pathway doesn't go away. It's still there. You just have a new one too. We have to intentionally choose, but unfortunately, that old one doesn't ever.
And as a person who's had a very strong addict aspect, I could, you know, I wondered that it almost feels like when you stay for a while, it builds up, it builds up, it builds up. Whatever it is, I think it's just a fall of emotion, and I've had to. It's been a lifelong process of continuing to work with tools, and because you can't, like you say, you can't eradicate the part. You can shift its energy. You know, so it's been a learning. It's been a real gauge for my own learning and development. I used to call it the beast.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would say, with rebounding and how it comes back sometimes even stronger, it's guilt shame built into a lot of the therapy process, either self-induced guilt or shame or societal factors that make people feel. Yeah, and it's also one of the reasons I think getting away from dates is also very important. If you put in a date, somebody relapses, then they view it as a failure.
Right.
So guilt and shame is something really important to avoid. Not putting unrealistic expectations. Also expectations of how many sessions you're going to need. Or to say that, hey, this has to be you and it has to be now. That's also a tough sell for somebody. Because for a lot of people, they do need to baby step. And those baby steps can be just as powerful as taking one big step. So they take the baby steps over time. It's just different for everybody. So to have one session, 4 or 5, really it's got to be to the individual with no guilt or shame stacked in there. If you have expectations that nowadays have external factors that are controlling them, just sets them up for failure, not for success.
Yeah, well said. for everyone.
Mhm.
And I think that goes to when you said, Danny, that those people didn't show up for that last session. It's often, and I think this is a huge part of the work that we do. I know it's a huge part of the work that I do, is trying to help them alleviate that guilt and shame and those pressures and expectations off of themselves. Right? They're not letting you down, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
you're not disappointing me. You are not letting me down. Don't, giving themselves more self-compassion and realizing that they don't have to put so much pressure and expectation on themselves. Because a lot of times, they may have thought, oh, she said on this next one, I have to set this date, and I'm not ready to set that date. And so they hide. So sometimes that can definitely.
They don't want to face you.
They don't want to face you.
No.
And so I do a lot of in things like my free talk, really building that relationship with them that they don't have to worry about that they can show up, whether it's good or whether it's not that day. And for them, taking all those outside external pressures and expectations and putting them on themselves and being in that shame and guilt, that isn't serving and supporting them. So help giving them strategies to alleviate that when that comes up, to reframe that negative self-talk and give them more of that growth mindset versus that like all or nothing. And yeah, a lot of my clients, they go straight for the all or nothing. If I can't do it, then I'm failed.
That's such a mindset. Like I have a different mindset than the IOP and outpatient facility you can't be here if you're not off of your drug. And I disagree with that. I'm more into the harm, but you gotta meet them where they're at. If they're not ready for that, I have I have a heroin addict I'm working with right now, and she knows she's welcome no matter what condition she's in. So you gotta bring them, you gotta build that self-love bubble first to get there.
That's so important because oh, that's so much pressure on someone to be like, you can't be here.
Right.
That's actually feeding into that all or nothing.
Yeah. Like once again, you don't belong.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. It's conditional. Yeah. So
You know,
important.
an example of harm reduction that I give to all my clients is I used to work at Project Neon, and I had a particular gentleman who was on the streets, shooting up every day, had no home, had nothing. After he started the program, and I used a lot of these, well, as I had to call them in the clinic, relaxation therapies. After he started the program, he got a job, got an apartment, had himself all set up. But once every 6 months, he wanted to use meth. And so he would set himself up for one weekend where he would use the meth. He'd have all the food, he'd tell people what was going on in case of any kind of emergency. And then after that weekend was done, he was clean again for another 6 months. And a couple of people started arguing, well, then he hasn't succeeded. I said, he's absolutely succeeded. He's got a job, he's got an apartment, he's doing really well with his life, and he has decided that I want to use this drug once every 6 months. I said, from what you're saying to me, it's like telling people that they're addicts because they get drunk on New Year's Eve. And that's the one time they do it. So it just because somebody uses the drug doesn't mean that you fail at anything. Harm reduction is an incredibly powerful tool that's being used all the time. And as I said, for a guy who was living on the streets and shooting up every day, to now have a job, having a place to live, and decide to do this once every 6 months, okay, if that's what you really want to do, I'm perfectly fine with that. It's up to you. And so that story helps a lot of people get it that, okay, so you're saying I'm not going to be a failure if I am not able to quit everything. Absolutely. And I said, no, you're not a failure. In fact, it was AA, Dr. Bill, who came up with the phrase, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. Well, interestingly enough, in the 1950s, he came out in the newspapers, you can look this up, that he was cured of his alcoholism. And the way he was cured of his alcoholism was microdosing of LSD to a psychiatrist. So there are a lot of different ways that you can do this. But what you got to do is you got to work on the emotional release pieces and really look at, well, what guided you into this? And what would you like to do about it without doing it the way somebody else wants you to do it? And just going by that thing, I've had plenty of clients, lots of clients who've gotten off and have gone on with their lives.
Kind of goes all back to what is the definition of a problem, right? If it's interfering with, disrupting any other area of your life, if it's detrimental to your relationships, your health, your work, whatever. I mean, that's when you really define anything as a problem is, is it affecting any of these areas? And yeah, if you make a choice, like you said, DL, if you're like, I want to get drunk on New Year's Eve, then if that's not disrupting any other area of your life, that's a problem necessarily. It's a choice. It's a decision.
Right, right, absolutely.
I think that comes down to personality again, because, if
100%.
you're romanticizing, like, I can just drink on, that was my problem. I quit drinking for months and months and months and be like, well, I'll just drink on a holiday. Or I'll just drink when I'm at a restaurant, that way it's not at my house. And then slowly, I'm drinking because I'm at it again, it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. So you have to
Because
know your.
it has to be completely nothing. It's like an all or nothing, because it just starts creeping in.
So you have to be at nothing. And you know that about yourself.
Yeah.
Important.
It'd be cool to have a drink just on New Year's, but then it's like New Year's becomes so rest
Yeah.
Friday now.
Again, back to the individual
Yeah,
lives.
right. Right, yeah.
You know.
And you kind of have to learn that about yourself. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think the important thing with that, all or nothing is like, if you flip up on something, that doesn't make it everything you did null and void. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't, all of those things.
Like, just give up because you already.
Yeah, why give up? Exactly. That's a lot of it. Yeah, that like, oh, just give up. I did it once. And it's like, no, you can make another decision, there's another opportunity for a decision to make. It's very empowering yourself. But like, that was one choice. That was yesterday. This is today. What do I want to choose today? Yeah, I appreciate everybody sharing all of your experiences. I feel like I definitely learned a lot from today.